Welcome into Inside the Arc. It is Alec Bussey, as always, joined by Brandon Simberg. We are kind of doing an episode that we did a lot of last year's sim today. We've got Sean Harrington coming on, member of the Illinois Fighting Illini from 1999 to the end of the 2003 season, to kind of talk about his two Big Ten championship teams, because those two teams are being honored on Saturday at State Farm Center against St. Francis. So we decided we wanted to bring Sean Harrington on to talk about that. But before we get to it, Sam, how we doing? Obviously, you were just in Memphis. You want to give your thoughts on Imani Bates? Are you still in?
Yeah, so I was in Memphis for a Grizzlies game on Monday night, as well as the Memphis-Alabama game on Tuesday night. And it's good to see different crowds. I think, after seeing the packed State Farm Center on Saturday, it was cool to get a look at the Memphis crowd on Tuesday, and it was a great environment. Memphis put out the win. Amani's a little rough right now. He's 6'9" and shooting like sub 40% at the rim. He takes some terrible shots, but he's also, I think, the youngest player in college. So the next Kevin Durant, I'm probably going to cross that off, but I still think he can be a good player. And Memphis is an interesting team. And overall, it was a fun trip.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I watched a good amount of that game last night, and Jalen Duren is really good. I don't know if he's like physically, he might be the most physically impressive player in the country when you look at him. Like, he's just cut up, right? But I don't know if he's, number one pick worthy right now. I don't know if he's going to be at the end of the season either. But yeah, I mean, Memphis is obviously really talented. They were playing like the way I expected Memphis to play before the season started, with Alex Lomax having a pretty good game as well. So we'll see. I think Alabama's going to be okay. That felt like a letdown game. So we'll see where Memphis is at. They're obviously one of the more entertaining teams to follow this year. But let's get to this interview with Sean Harrington. I'm excited for it. All right, we're now joined by Sean Harrington, two-time Big Ten champion. I'm sure that always feels good to hear, right? Sean, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's just kind of jump right into this, right? Like, you're coming back to Champaign on Saturday. I'm sure it'll be one of your first few times back maybe in a while, especially with COVID going on. Like, how excited are you to get back on campus and be back with some of your old teammates to celebrate?
Yeah, I'm super excited to get together with the team, and it's been a while since we've all gotten together, and we've got a lot of text threads going. We've stayed in touch with some text messaging and phone calls with guys here and there. But for all of us to get together in one spot at the same time, it doesn't happen often. And we had a reunion for the 10-year anniversary of the Big Ten Championship, and we were able to get just about everybody back in for that. And that was really cool, just to get back together with the guys and have memories and talk about past games and kind of what everybody's up to now. And but just the memories are the biggest thing. And for 4 years, you put your heart and soul into something, and it really does create a brotherhood and a bond amongst the team. Just how much time we spend, and then the success that we had was just awesome. We all got to go on a terrific journey together. So many great games, so many fun atmospheres that we got to play in, places that it took us. We love rehashing those stories, and the stories keep growing, it seems like. So they get bigger and better and grander. You know how it is as the years go on. So they get funnier, I think, too, as we tell stories too. It definitely gets exaggerated as we keep telling them. But it's a great group. So yeah, we're excited to get back for the 20 year, and to be able to go back and watch a game where we all played together is going to be pretty cool.
So people who have graduated from Champaign at the beginning of the century, and even in the last 5 or 10 years, have said that the town itself has really changed. How have you kind of seen it change since you were there?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on campus, but it seems like campus living and dorm lives and all that's gotten a whole lot better. So I think everybody's being spoiled now with how good all the facilities and everything are. And then obviously on the athletic side, there's been a huge change to renovation to, we still call it the hall. That's what we played in, but I know it's the State Farm Center now. But obviously renovations to that. I know they're going to start something on Ubben here coming up as well. That's in the process. So you just kind of look around all the facilities that are being upgraded and changed. And, I've always loved Champaign as a community. It's a great fan base. It's a very passionate fan base. I think it's really cool when you can get into those, college towns where it's the university is the town, and everybody kind of rallies around that. Just a lot of great people in the Champaign-Urbana community. So it'll be fun to get back to see familiar faces, some old friends, just all the people that supported us through the years. That I imagine a lot of them are still season ticket holders, so they're going to be at the game, on Saturday. So it's a lot of familiar faces, and that'll be really cool to see.
So it's your senior year, 2003, maybe the off season. You're going out to eat at one place in Champaign. What's your go-to meal? Because I feel like now a lot of guys would say like Chipotle or kind of something on Green Street. But what was your like go-to like one spot that you'd want to hit?
Yeah, the spaghetti shop, and that closed down. So that used to be in Savoy. We used to crush that. Our team was probably the reason it went out of business. It was an all-you-can-eat pasta place, and we would go in there and just destroy it. So I mean, it was the best deal in town. I want to say it was like $6 or $7 all you can eat, and you get spaghetti and pasta and garlic bread and the whole works in there. And we would just go in there and just kill it. So the spaghetti shop was our go-to as a team. And like I said, it's not there anymore. I wish they'd bring that back, but we might be the reason it went out of business. They couldn't afford it anymore after the team would roll through there.
You got an opinion on La Bamba? That was one of my parents' favorite places and one of mine, but I don't go over there very often.
Yeah, it's a staple. Obviously, everybody that's been on campus has ate there at one point or another. You got to get the burritos as big as your head, and but I think you just hit it. Chipotle came in there later. I'm a Chipotle guy now, so that seems to be the crowd favorite. But La Bamba's is one of those that you just kind of say it, and people know that they're from Illinois, they're from Champaign. They went to the University of Illinois if they're talking about La Bamba's.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine most of the business back in the day came after, midnight and kids are stumbling in there and stumbling out with a huge burrito, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Little Papa Del's. You got to get some pizza as well. It's always a good spot back in the day as well. So you got to get that deep dish pizza. You're used to that when you go to Chicago.
So Sean, I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about, I guess, the first team that won the Big Ten title, that 2001 team. Bill Self comes in, first year head coach, taking over for Lon Kruger. Can you kind of describe or take us into what that was like to have Bill Self kind of come in, just this guy from Tulsa, and now we know what Bill Self is. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, for us, it was kind of a unique situation because Lon Kruger left so late. It was May when he took off for the NBA, and that was before social media was really out of control, and the worlds of Twitter and all that. So we literally found out about it with a phone call, and it was Lon Kruger calling all of us and letting us know that he had taken the job. So we had just went home. The academic season had just ended. The school year had just ended. So we had about a 2 to 3 week period where you could go home and just kind of be at home for 2 weeks before we all came back for summer school. So that was kind of a surprise when that happened. And then I remember getting the call that they had made the hire. And we all came back in the campus to meet Bill Self. And to be honest, we didn't really know who he was. We knew that he went to the Elite Eight the year before with Tulsa. So we knew that they had a couple good years there, but he was unproven. So he wasn't a guy that was coming in there that we all knew who he was. But I just remember kind of right from the beginning that he was a player's coach and really related well to us. And Lon Kruger did a really good job of getting great talent and assembling that roster and helping us out with fundamentals and really getting us prepared that we knew we were going to have a good team that year. And then I think with Bill Self coming in, it just took it up to a new level. And everybody was out to prove themselves. Anybody, roles were kind of defined under Lon Kruger because he kind of knew who his starters were going to be going to that next year and maybe who was first or second off the bench. And things were kind of, the way that he had it. So everyone now felt like, here's your opportunity. If you didn't like where you were, you had a chance to prove to the new staff that maybe you should get a starting role. Or if you used to be a starter, you had to prove yourself all over again that Bill Self style was going to work for your game, just like Lon Kruger style worked for your game. So our practices were crazy intense. That's the deepest team that I've ever been a part of. When you look at kind of that's, the next 5 or 6 through 10, that was a really good squad in itself, let alone 1 through 5 on that team. So, we went 9 deep on that team, 10 deep on that team. And those next 5 were could compete with anybody and play with anybody as well. So it was a very physical team. It was a very big team. And like I said, a very deep team. We could wear people down, and that's what we did that year.
What's a Bill Self like practice? I mean, you said it was incredibly difficult to practice for him, but like, do you have any stories or memories of practicing for Bill Self?
Yeah, I mean, it was very aggressive. We got after it. We played hard. He had a way of getting you to play really hard, and he could get on you in practice to push you to get you going even farther and get all over you. And then after practice, kind of take you to the side, put his arm around you, tell a good joke, or ask you about how things were going off the court, and you felt like you were back in really good graces with him, even though he rode you for 2.5 hours in practice. So that got you to play really hard. But kind of two stories. One was from that season, and then one was from a few years later. And it just showed how hard we went. We were getting ready to play Kansas in the Sweet 16 that year. And so this is the day before the Sweet 16, obviously one of the biggest games of the year up to that point. And we did our kind of shoot around, stretching, those types of things for 10 to 15 minutes. And now it was time to go live. And we went live for about 5 minutes, and there was a loose ball. And about 7 or 8 guys dove on the ball. I mean, it was just a scrum at midcourt, and everybody's, fighting for the ball, getting after it. And Bill Self just stops practice right then and there. He goes, "We're good to go." He goes, "You guys get the couple shots up if you want." He's like, "Otherwise, we're ready to go." And I remember the broadcasting crew was there, because they watched practice the day before to kind of get some insight and kind of get a feel for the team. Watch them in practice, and they couldn't believe it. They're like, "What do you mean you're done? That was 15 minutes of practice. You're not going to do anything else?" And he just said that if that's what my team's doing right now, whatever we do for the next hour and a half won't matter, because they're ready to go. They're locked in, they're focused. And, that was our mentality. We just practiced hard. We got after it. And that was every day. So that's the Sweet 16. We had gone through a whole season of practice in that way. That was just what the culture had become and how hard we went after it. And like I said, then a couple years later, Coach Gillespie got the job at UTEP. So he left, and Tim Jankovic came in, and he replaced him. And so he was there for the first couple days. He wasn't sure if he was going to be the assistant or not. Coach Self was kind of interviewing him. He was kind of checking out the team, seeing how everything was, seeing if it was a good mesh for the staff and all that. And he couldn't believe how hard we were going. I was on the staff with Bill Self at Kansas the next year after we left, and Tim Jankovic was there. And he told me he thought that we were all practicing hard to impress him for those first couple of days. He's like, but then I was there for a week, and you guys just kept going that hard. And then it had been a month, and you guys just kept going that hard. And he's like, finally, I just said, like, do you guys ever lighten up? Do you guys ever go easy in practice? And that was just what it was. That was, 2 years removed from that 2001 team, but the culture had been set. That was the mentality that we came in with. We were going to play hard. We were going to be aggressive. We were going to practice hard. And it showed on the court. And we're very proud of what we did in those 4 years, especially those 2 years getting the Big Ten championships.
I feel like if you ask a current Illinois student like ourselves, who is Illinois' biggest rival today, and like who's the team you want to beat the most, there's obviously a lot of Michigan animosity that's built up over the last calendar year. Iowa the last 2 years has kind of been in the mix, but I'm not sure that was always the case historically. Back when you were playing, like who was kind of the team or teams that was viewed as like your rival and the team that you kind of had that game circled on your calendar?
Yeah, Michigan State was the standard kind of at that time. They had just come off the national championship. That was my freshman year. So going into that next season, obviously they were the team to beat. So we were going into that 2001 season. That was the year we won the Big Ten, and we beat them at our place for Paint the Hall Orange. That was the first Paint the Hall Orange, if you can believe that or not, that the hall used to not be painted orange all the time. So everybody wore orange to that game. That was the first time we did that. But Michigan State was kind of the standard because they were coming off the NCAA championship, and they had pounded us the year before. I mean, just beat us like a drum at their place. And so that was where we were trying to get. So as far as like rivalry, there was a really big respect for them. It was just, that's where we wanted to be. But as far as like your rivals that the fans think about and all that, it was Indiana, it was Iowa. Those were probably the two biggest, historically. We all felt that going into those games. Both of those teams were pretty good in that era as well. So kind of that 3-4 year stretch, they had some good teams as well. So anytime the teams are good, it makes for even better rivalries. And so I would say Michigan State was the team that we were trying to top and trying to overcome. And then Iowa and Indiana at that time were still probably our biggest rivals. And I would say historically, that's still the case as well.
So I'm looking at this 2001 Michigan State team, the year after they won the title, and they tied with you for the Big Ten standings, and they were no slouch either. They had future NBA pros Jason Richardson and Zach Randolph, who both had really long careers. Could you tell back then in 2001 that like those guys were going to be just dudes in the long run?
No question. Yeah, I mean there were just certain teams that you played against, you knew they had it. We played everybody that year. That was the year. It was just seemed like every team we played, there was going to be future NBA players, future NBA All-Stars. But I remember trying to box out Jason Richardson. And I'm just like, how am I going to get this guy off the glass? There's no chance. He's just flying up above me. So I remember him extremely well, thinking, that's the dude I got to try to box out. I got no chance at this. So it was just, take yourself and him out of the game. Just try to not let him get the rebound, even though you're probably not going to get it. But we played. Duke was number one in the country that year. We played against them. They ended up winning the national title that year. We lost to them by 1 in Greensboro. I think we had 30 turnovers in that game. So, for us to lose by 1 with 30 turnovers, we felt like we were right there with them. But that's Jay Williams, at the time. That's Battier, that's Boozer, that's Dunleavy. So, I mean, you just rattled off, 4 NBA players there. And I don't think we even went to the bench there with Duhan. I think he might even been part of that team at that time as well. So they were loaded. We played Arizona 3 times that year. And they got Richard Jefferson. Obviously, he's NBA player. Gilbert Arenas. You're talking about an NBA All-Star in there. So it just seemed like every single time we took the floor, we were playing against a team that was loaded. We played Maryland in Maui that year. They were a Final Four team that year. They had Juan Dixon on that team. Steve Blake on that team. So it seemed like every single time that we took the floor in the non-conference, we were playing a ranked team, and we were playing a team that had at least 2 future NBA players on that team. So it was a really fun year. As a player, that's what you live for, is that every game, the next game is a big game. You hear that coach speak all the time, right? The most important game's the next one. We're only focused on the next game. That was the case with that team, because every time we looked on the schedule, the next team was a ranked opponent. So we had no choice but to get ready for the next one. And, as a player, you love that, is just to be challenged, played in incredible environments that season, and just against a lot of really good players, a lot of really good teams. And so that made that season even more special.
Sean, you look at these rosters that you played with, and obviously there's one name I feel like that kind of really jumps off the page, right? It's Frank Williams, and how much love he got from Illini fans. I kind of wanted to ask you about his maybe 2 most famous plays in an Illinois uniform. Obviously the pass against Iowa and the Dickie V just kind of freaking out on ESPN. Like, what was that play like? Can you kind of take me into it? Just he just like threw it.
Yeah. He had a couple of them in that game. So I know the one you're probably referring to is kind of the breakaway, and he catches it kind of over his shoulder and then just flips it backwards, and Cook throws it down. And that one, I think when it happened, it was almost like, what did he just do? Like, how did he even make that play? Frank had a way of seeing things that nobody else saw. So he would make a play in a game, then we'd go back and film and watch it the next day, and you'd look at it and you're like, how did he see that? How did he know that was going to work? But that was what he did. And that pass to Cook, I think, is probably on every Illinois highlight film that you can make. The Hall was just rocking in that one. And in the second half, he gets a steal, and he's going, he's coming down on the right side, and he throws a behind the back pass from outside the 3. I think it's into Cook again, and Cook lays it in at the basket. So, I mean, you're talking about a 25-foot behind the back pass that he makes kind of in traffic, and it hits Cook right in the chest. And Cook, I think, even fumbled that one a little bit and then laid it in and because he couldn't even believe that it was there. So those were the type of plays that he made. And then, obviously, the next year he goes and makes the game winner against Minnesota that wins the Big Ten championship. So those are probably the ones that stick out in my mind the most. And then the 2002 season when he just went off at Michigan State and just had a monster game there. When he didn't play great against Michigan State, I think at our place before that, and he had something to prove, and it was just one of those that he was going to show that, he was better than those guys at Michigan State. So a couple of those games just stick out. And, he just had a feel for the game that was incredible. He glided when he played. It just looked like he was, just kind of gliding through air. It looked like he wasn't even trying to play hard because he was just that much better than everybody else, that he just did it in a smooth way, and it looked good while he was out there doing it.
So obviously, you think back and you hear the Assembly Hall and how loud it was. I mean, my cousins went to school here at that time and they tell stories about how loud it was. And you talked about the first paint the hall orange, something that they still kind of do today. As a kid growing up in the state of Illinois, from Bartlett, I believe, right? And I'm sure you grew up watching Illinois. I mean, they were pretty good in the 90s when you were a kid. I don't know how old or young you would have been for the Flying Illini team, but when you think back to when you were in high school and then you kind of come to Illinois and you struggle in your first year, but you're able to eventually kind of turn into a Big Ten champion for 2 years there. Like what was that like for you to kind of, I assume, kind of live out a big goal or dream that you had?
Yeah, I'm a basketball junkie, and I'm probably next level junkie. Like even as a kid, it was all I did. It was Nerf hoops all the time, playing out in the driveway, watching it on TV. I was a video game guy, but the only video games I played was Double Dribble for Nintendo, and then the March Madness games. When it goes on to Sega or those types of things. So I just loved basketball growing up, and I loved going to the IHSA, and that was obviously at the Assembly Hall before it moved to Peoria for all those years. So one of the most exciting parts of my year was spring break. It usually fell. That was always a dream of mine, to play in the Assembly Hall as a high school player, to play in a state championship, to play in that Elite Eight atmosphere. So just growing up watching that is where it started. And then obviously, TV is so different now too, where you just used to get regional, so every game that was on TV was Big Ten. That was what you grew up watching. And, I remember UNLV was, number one back in the day in the early 90s, and you'd be lucky to catch 2 or 3 of their games all year long. And you can't imagine now, the number one team in the country, you only get to see them, 2 or 3 times the entire season. So every game you saw was Big Ten. Every game you saw was Illinois, and it was always on TV. So, you wanted to be part of the Big Ten growing up in the Midwest. You wanted to go to Illinois when you had that pride of being in the state school. So then getting the chance to play in front of the Assembly Hall, it was awesome. And the crowds were great. We mentioned the Paint the Hall orange, and, talking to former opponents, they said, the hall was as loud as they could ever remember, some of the Big Ten arenas back in the day. And obviously a lot of that had to do with, how well we were playing, that we were getting sellouts and the crowd was getting into it. And, something we take a lot of pride in is, we finished our 4 years 51-2 at the Assembly Hall in those 4 years. And that was the best record in that 4-year stretch of any team in the country at home. So the senior year, we won the Big Ten tournament and we got our rings, and on our rings, we put Defend the Hall, and we put 51-2. It was something that, that's on our rings right now. And we have that forever. So it was a magical time. It was a fun time. And, how exciting that is. You kind of look back and you almost took it for granted at the time, but anybody that was going to a game at that time basically had a 97% chance of seeing a victory if they were going to go to an Illinois home game. It was, you knew you were going there for a celebration. So that was a lot of fun. And I think the loudest I ever heard that place was when Marcus Griffin made the lob against Wisconsin at the buzzer. And how often are you a part of a buzzer beater, that the whole crowd just goes crazy at the exact same time? Because as soon as that ball hit the net, 16-5 went absolutely nuts. And I just remember the floor was almost shaking at that time. It was, running back down the floor after he hit it, you could just feel almost, like a shake in the floor. And I mean, it was just the noise was deafening. And that was probably as loud as I've ever heard a place after Griff hit that shot.
So your senior year, you kind of talk about that 4-year stretch and that 4-year run where you guys were dominated at home. At this point, Frank Williams is no longer on the team. Brian Cook's a senior and he's graduating, but you did play with freshmen Dee Brown and James Augustine, who both made the all Big Ten freshman team. Playing with those guys, could you kind of tell how special they were? And then were you surprised with the success they had over the next few years? Like, could you kind of see that coming?
Yeah, no, you could see it coming. And, Darren's obviously the other one. Darren Williams obviously part of that too. And that's the beautiful thing about college is age is so important and experience is so important. So I was a good player, but by the time I was a senior, I had seen so much and I knew kind of what to do and how to play. So in practice, it was a nightmare going up against D and Darren every day, but I could kind of hold my own. And I just said, my God, I'm glad I'm getting out of here now because there's no way I want to guard these guys for the next 2 and 3 years because they're only going to get better. So, that's the beauty is seniors can still kind of hang with freshmen no matter how good they are. But at that point, I was happy I was getting out that I didn't have to guard those two guys. I just had to guard Frank for 3 years. I had to guard Corey Bradford for 3 years. And now you're going to throw D and Darren in my face. So I got tested every single day in practice with incredible players. But you could see it in D, you could see it in Darren. You knew how special they were going to be. They were very good freshmen, but you knew they hadn't even scratched the surface of how good they could be once they adjusted to the college game and the length and the speed and seeing what works and what doesn't work and get that experience on the court for themselves. You knew they were going to be really, really good players. And then Luther obviously developed extremely well over those next couple of years too. And Roger was a great player. And then, you mentioned James already as well. So, those 5 guys, I was very fortunate to get to play with 3 of them for a couple years and, or 2 of them for 2 years. And then 3 of them for that 1 year when they were all freshmen. And, that was a very good group of guys and a very talented group of guys. And then we take a lot of pride in kind of their success, knowing that we kind of laid the foundation, kind of what we talked about, that culture and that toughness. And then they just took it to another level with getting to that Final Four a couple years later then.
So, Sean, I kind of also wanted to ask you a little bit about this year's team. You mentioned that you're a basketball junkie. I follow you on Twitter. I always see your pregame, keys to the game, whatever, with the whiteboard. I watch those all the time because I learned something from them. When you watch this year's team, what have you kind of taken away from them? I think a lot of people are maybe disappointed with the way it started, but I also think a lot of people maybe walked out of State Farm Center last week encouraged with the way they played against Arizona.
Yeah, we haven't seen the best of this team yet, and we don't even know who this team is yet because of, obviously the Kofi suspension, the flu virus that went through the guys. And then Curbello's been injured now for, I guess, a handful of games almost now. I feel like it's been almost 5 games now. So this team they aren't what they're going to be. I said, what's really great is maybe a little disappointed that they're 7-3, but what's awesome is this team's finally good enough that those 3 games aren't going to hurt their NCAA. This is 4 years ago, and we're saying, well, there goes the NCAA tournament. Now we got to run the table or we got to win the Big Ten tournament. That's not the case with this team. This is an NCAA tournament team. This is a Big Ten championship caliber team. I think they're going to be right there competing for the Big Ten this year. I think they're a second weekend NCAA tournament team. If things go well, they could obviously make a Final Four run. Obviously, in the NCAA tournament, you could get eliminated early as well. That's the beauty about the NCAA tournament. It's one and done, and it just takes one game that somebody gets hot and knocks you off. So, but I love Kofi. Yeah, I mean, in 2 years now, you haven't seen a team that's really taken him out of what he wants to do. Saw a little bit of a stretch there in the beginning of the second half with Arizona that he struggled a little bit, but he's dominant, and because of that, he's going to be able to not let this team go on dry spells where they go through droughts with 2, 3, 4 minutes of time without scoring because you get an easy bucket. And then the guard play, obviously with Frazier, obviously with Plummer, they're shooting the ball extremely well now. Grandison's shooting the ball well, so you're able to space the floor around Kofi, and we haven't even seen Curbello now for a handful of games. And when they get him back, it's going to change the dynamic of this team. You mentioned the scouting reports. I always kind of look at it from a coaching perspective. So if I'm getting ready to play Illinois right now, I can guard Plummer and I can guard Frazier the same way because there's very similar players. So now we can tell our guards that we're going to trail them on every screen. We're going to follow their tail on every screen. We're going to trap every ball screen, or we're going to hedge and go over the top every ball screen, but we're going to play them both the exact same way. So when you're out there on the floor defensively, you're not having to think, who am I guarding this time? Who do I have this time? I'm going to play it the same way. When you get Curbello out there, you have to play him completely different than Frazier and Plummer. So now you've got a guard that's out there thinking, okay, I'm supposed to go under the screen on Curbelo. Is my big man going to remember that? I'm supposed to go over the screen on Frazier. Is my big guy going to remember that? So now there's a little bit of a doubt, in that defender's mind. Now they're a second slow reading some of those screens, and that's where you get some openings. You're going to get Curbelo that can get into the lane to kick out the shooters now. He's the one guy that can really break down a defender in a one-on-one situation, then create for others. So he'll change the dynamic of that. I'm encouraged with this team. Like I said, it's obviously you want to win all your games, but there's a big picture with this team, and it's going to keep getting better. You're 2-0 in the Big Ten. So, everyone kind of wants to talk about the 7-3, which I get, but you're 2-0 in the Big Ten. The ultimate goal is a Big Ten championship. So right now, after 2 games, they've got themselves in a perfect spot for that. I think Purdue's really good. You get to play them twice. So those are going to be incredible matchups when they go up head to head against each other. But this team's good enough to win the Big Ten. I put them up there with Purdue as the 2 best teams right now, kind of, above everybody else to see who goes into that next tier. But I'm really excited for this team to kind of see how they can grow. Obviously, Curbelo's got to get healthy, got to keep everybody else healthy in the mix as well. But if the pieces fall the way that they're supposed to and everybody's healthy, this is a very, very, very good team moving forward.
Offensively, kind of from an X's and O's standpoint, how have you seen this team's offense switch a bit from, everything kind of running through Io to this year? You were kind of running stuff through Curbelo at the start, and now it's all through Kofi. What kind of adjustments have you seen Brett Underwood make offensively without Io?
Yeah, it's, who's going to be that playmaker, right? I think that's what they're trying to have to find out is late game situation, who's going to take that shot. And I don't think there's an answer for that right now. I think that's part of it that they're going to have to kind of figure out as the season goes on. Who do you trust with the ball in late game situations? There's a lot more movement maybe right now, just off the ball, because you start talking about Frazier, you start talking about Plummer, get those guys maybe coming off screens, so there's more action as opposed to kind of a one-on-one with Io with spot-up shooters out there. But you can get those guys moving a lot more now with Frazier and Plummer, because you got 2 guys that are stroking it from deep that can come off of screens. They don't need to be spot-up shooters. They can shoot off the move. So I like that a lot. And then obviously, teams have had a year to prepare for Kofi. And as difficult as that is, you're going to start seeing different situations. You're going to see double teams. You're going to see them play them straight up. You're going to see some zones against them. So finding ways to get Kofi the ball is going to be important, because even if he's not scoring, Arizona was doubling off a Plummer in that game. So you think about that. A guy is shooting almost 50% from 3 over the last 4 or 5 games, and they're willing to leave him to go double Kofi. And it was off the ball, the strong side. It wasn't even like they were leaving him from the opposite side and then make Kofi throw a skip pass. He would catch it in the strong side corner, throw it into Kofi. They would leave him. All Kofi had to do is just catch it, throw it right back out, and Plummer's got a wide open shot. So it shows, the attention that the defense is going to show on Kofi. So even if the play's not run for Kofi, he has to get touches, because that's going to open up things for the outside. And I know he didn't have a lot of assists last year. He doesn't even need to get assists. He just needs to touch it, throw it right back out, and then you have the defense scrambling, get ball movement. Somebody else will get the assist. He'll get the hockey assist, get that first pass and get it going. But just important to get him some touches inside and get movement around him, so you're not staring him down. And then that defense can adjust to it. You want that ball to be swinging and then throw it in there. Now they're in scramble situation. That's when you get open looks. And that's where you get a chance to crash the boards. You've seen Coleman Hawkins do a really good job of getting on the boards. If that defense is in rotation, they're killing teams on the board right now. Outside of, I think, Cincinnati and Arizona, every other game, they just dominated the glass. Mm-hmm. And that can continue because of rotations. They'll have guys that can fly in there and get rebounds.
So, Sean, before we get out of here, I got one fun question for you. You're one of, I would say, the better three-point shooters in Illinois basketball history. You got a career percentage of 42.8. That's pretty impressive. You, Luther Head, Corey Bradford, and Alfonso Plummer are all at your prime in a three-point contest. Who wins?
I have to. I've got some pride, and I'm going to say I'm going to win that. And you're talking about great shooters, and obviously I got the privilege to play with Corey, and he's one of the best shooters in Illinois history as well. And him and I would spend hours in the gym together, and I roomed with him the last 2 years that he was at Illinois. So we had a great relationship, and we spent all kinds of time in the gym. We used to cut our fingers open because we would take so many shots. They would cut open on us, and we'd be taping them up in the off season because we get shots. So I respect Corey's game, but of course, I believe in my prime, I'm going to knock it down. And, Corey and I are going to be biased and say we didn't get enough shots back in the day. So the game has changed now. Steph Curry's changed the game, and everybody shoots threes. So if I could have got more threes, if Corey would have got more three attempts, and our offense would have been, evolved around the three a little bit more like it is today, then I think we'd still be up on that list. But we just keep getting passed now because everybody's shooting threes and everybody's making threes. So I just see my name going slow, moving down that list because everybody just keeps passing us as time goes on. But the threes just become so much of a part of the game. But Plummer, he's on a streak like we haven't seen in a long time. He's really shooting it well. But yeah, I've got too much pride to say that I'm going to give it up to one of those guys. I'll take it.
So on our last podcast, I think Sim and I asked each other, Alfonso Plummer's the best 3-point shooter at Illinois since who? You might be better equipped to answer this question. I think we ended up going all the way back to Luther Head. Would you say that's accurate, or would you put someone else in there?
I'd have to think kind of in that stretch. He would be the first one that would stand out for sure. I hope I'm not disrespecting anybody by quickly thinking off the top of my head, but I would say that's probably accurate. I would say you could make a case for that obviously going back to Luther and then kind of going through it the rest of the way, Plummer is your next best thing. So I would say that would be pretty accurate now without completely disrespecting somebody looking over those kind of 16, 17 years right there. But that's probably about right.
Yeah, we threw names in there like Brandon Paul, Kendrick Nunn, got some consideration, DJ Richardson too, but we were like, those guys just didn't do it like Plummer did, and we're going all the way back to Luther Head. So glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And
well, Sean,
that's shooting it well, talking about those guys. So you're in good company. If you're even being compared to Luther Head and Plummer, then you should take some pride in being on that list anyway.
Well, Sean, we appreciate you coming on. Welcome back to Champaign on Saturday. Congratulations. We'll be able to look at that banner one more time. Make sure to wear your rings. I know that's something that you do with a lot of pride. So thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Once again, special thanks to Sean Harrington for joining us on this episode of Inside the Arc. Pretty fun kind of conversation there at the end. I was actually a little bit surprised he picked himself, but I like the confidence.
That's a shooter's mindset though. Like you don't become that good of a shooter if you don't think you're the best shooter on any court at any given time. So a little surprised, but you gotta have that confidence. You're going to shoot 42% at the D1 level. So
who are you picking in said competition?
I mean, the only guy I've seen like actually play is Plummer, but just given what I know about like Luther Head and the big shots he's made and just the competitor he was, it was just hard for me. It would be hard for me to pick against that guy. Maybe he's not the best pure shooter, but I think they're shooting in an open gym, like no one's watching, and they're shooting with something on the line. And given what I know about Luther, I'm probably going Luther.
Sim, you and I share the same opinion too much. Okay. I was also going to pick Luther. But I don't think we need to do a prediction for Saturday's game. I've taken the Illini in a pretty convincing manner. At least it should be. Still no update on whether Alfonso Plummer is back as of yet.
Andre Curbelo.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Plummer is playing as far as I know. And yeah, so no update as we record this on Wednesday. But yeah, take care of everyone. Good luck on finals if you're a student still listening to this. We're both done, I think, at this point, besides a few little minor things. But yeah, make sure to take care of everyone, and thanks for listening.